Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 366 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming from Sandusky, Ohio, and I am glad you're checking out this episode. This is the sixth preview episode for 2025, and in just a moment, I'm going to be joined by one heck of a guy, Chris Pepper from the Lace Out podcast. And Peps is a mad Melbourne Demons supporter, but calls it fair when things are going well. He's loving it. When it's not going well, he's not afraid to tell you that as well. So I do hope you enjoy this one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you'll head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com, and get signed up on the mailing list there so that when new episodes come out, you've got them in your inbox within about 20 minutes of when they're released. Also, head over to my YouTube channel and get subscribed over there as well. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. If you enjoy it, that'd be fantastic. Also, if you enjoy it, take a few minutes and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts or over on my website. That gives me some opportunities to be able to share with prospective listeners that there are people in Australia that appreciate what I'm doing, and along with several other American podcasters as well, promoting this game that we have fallen in love with here. So you can also, if you've got a footy club that you'd like to have a shout out for, in a local club during an upcoming episode, please let me know about that as well. Get onto X and give me a follow there at Yank_on. Reach out to me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com if you would like to be a guest or you've got somebody that you think would be a fantastic guest of the podcast. That'd be a huge help. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Chris Pepper. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am absolutely thrilled to be welcoming my guest to the podcast here. He's been a great friend of the podcast from the outset. He is still the only other podcast out there who is represented on the back window of my van. He's one of the hosts of the Lace Out podcast, the absolute legend, Chris Pepper. How are you doing today, sir, on Australia Day?
Mr. Wessels, happy Australia Day to all your listeners, home and abroad. We are pumped, mate. Football season's only starting 50 plus days away.
Yep.
It's come around so quickly. The papers are full of absolute garbage in relation to who's going where, and we're still 10 months away from trade period.
I thought Robo retired.
No, it's just everywhere at the moment. But
sorry, Robo.
It's a great time for footy because we love our sport so much, and having an opportunity to talk about my team, which is Melbourne, to you every single year is one of the highlights of my podcasting season. And Jamie and I will be back in 2025 for our 8th season. So we are
good deal.
But you reached out. You've been a great friend of the show literally since day dot. And yeah, really looking forward to talking about not just Melbourne Football Club and where I think that they're going to go and what happened last year, but a number of teams and sort of see the season heading for 2025.
And I definitely wanted to get into and talk about last season. They were a game below being level. It's a lot of things happen with this club, and it was kind of like a TV soap opera, if you will, one of those TV dramas. That with everything that happened. So looking back at last year, and there were so many things that happened, whether it be Petrarca's injury, Clayton Oliver, with his issues, and then, is he going to Geelong? Is he not going to Geelong? What's he doing? Is he still going to play? Is he going to retire? Just so much happened. Just take a couple of moments and just kind of recap from your perspective what happened in 2024, because I know we watched a lot of your clips leaving the MCG when you were just over the moon ecstatic about your club's performance a few times, but quite often you were also not terribly happy.
Yeah. I've put it, so I played footy for 26 years, followed it for I'm on 49 this year, so I've probably followed it for 40 plus years, right? But the older you get, the one thing that I've realized is that you've got to get your off-field right to get your on-field right. And you ever look at the clubs who are really successful, your mob being Geelong, one of them, Hawthorn, Brisbane, Sydney, etc. Their off-field side of things is solid, rock hard. Like there's nothing going on. And if it is, you take care of it really quickly. Biggest challenge that Melbourne had last year was we had so many off-field dramas going on that just reflected in what was going on from an on-field perspective. You had the Glenn Bartlett situation. You had Gary Pert going on. You had the Roffey bits and pieces, the Roffey interview. It even started before the season when Gary Pert did his interview on SEN and said it was the best culture he'd seen in 40 years. And we're like, mate, you've got your head in the sand here, my friend. And so all that sort of stuff just tends to peter on. The media gets stuck into it. It's like most things. If it's chirping in the side of your ear, you tend to start believing it, and then the players start on. The standards probably, I would say, would have dropped, even though they won't admit it. But you could sort of see that we were going into every single season, especially the last couple, with the same game plan. It was contest, 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 pressure, contest. That's great. But as Pearl Jam said, it's evolution, baby, and you've got to move on with the times. And they didn't move on with the times, and they were getting blown away by teams. So the contest side of things did work, but there was no plan B to that. Plus, it is a really taxing type of game style. And to have a taxing game style, you need fit players. Clayton Oliver, he copped it. He deserved what he got, but he didn't do a preseason. Okay? Harrison Petty didn't do a preseason. So how are you expecting one to be one of your best on ballers to dominate when he hasn't done a preseason? He's literally trying to do it. He's on the back burner from the start. And then you got Harrison Petty, who couldn't do it, etc., whether foot issues, etc. He was almost doing it as the season was going along as well. So he's expecting to be a key forward. He couldn't get himself to game, couldn't get to contests. As it went longer, he was tiring out. And so when you got two players on the field who aren't able to do what they want to do, you're just not going to be capable. You bring in a Shane McAdam who just didn't fire whatsoever, just unfit. Gawn goes down for a couple of weeks. We know what happened with Petrarca. May goes down. Lever goes down. So when you haven't got a full complement, things are going to happen. And, you have a look at their results. They lost 4 games by less than 10 points last year. If they win 3 of those, they end up in the top 4. That's how top it can be. So they weren't far off it, but the results didn't go their way.
Right,
and I think that shows the difference between teams that are coming along and fit and firing, and you only have to be a little bit off, and that's just the evenness of the competition. They got found out, and that's why they ended up 14th, and I think that's where they probably deserve to be. If they'd made finals, they wouldn't have made an inroads. They wouldn't have had the capabilities. If they went up against a Brisbane, or if they went up against I'd even say a Hawthorn, they would have struggled. They just everything there. So, it was everything that could have gone wrong, but there's no more Roffey there. There's no more Pert there. There's hardly any Melbourne off-field issues. They've fixed up the Glenn Bartlett situation. So all that off-field stuff is nicely in tune. Brad Green's done a really amicable job. They're looking at Stephen Smith to come in and take over in the near future to join the board and be president. They're looking for a new CEO. So I think that they've got a lot of things in place off-field. Now the on-field stuff has to evolve. And I think with all the stuff with Petrarca coming in and saying, look, this needs to change, it shook the boat a little bit. And I think sometimes you need to do that. And the game style needed to evolve, because if it didn't evolve, players wouldn't want to be there, because you don't want to play a game style that you're not enjoying, and the coach wouldn't be there either. So, we'll get into some things that I've noticed when I've gone down to training a couple of times. But I'm pretty buoyant based on if that was how bad we could be last year with a really tough draw. Everything goes right. It has to go right. There's a lot of luck in footy with and I don't like the word easier draw, because I think the draws, when they come out, a lot of people get sucked into, we're playing North Melbourne. We're playing Hawthorn. Well, it doesn't work like that anymore. There's things that are in play that determine whether you've got an easy or a hard draw, and a lot of it is outside of your control. Right. So I'm pretty buoyant on them this year. But I do have a couple of concerns which I think they've addressed.
Okay. So, were you worried that this year's training, before the trade deadline was finished and that sort of thing, were you worried that there was a possibility that this club was going to come back to train and Clayton Oliver was not going to be in the midfield and Christian Petrarca was not going to be in the midfield? If he had said, you know what, I don't like the way things are going, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. That kind of like the game show thing, or the reality TV show.
Really good point. If I was more concerned, it would have been with Oliver than Petrarca. Deep down, I don't think any of them would have gone anywhere, for the simple fact for you to go somewhere, you have to have currency. Geelong didn't have the currency because they were going on Bailey Smith, so they would have had to give something. They would have had to give something back if they wanted Oliver.
Yeah,
and also to take on that wage would have been a big thing. And
right.
See Melbourne. Look, I think they've given him the ultimatum. If you don't shape up and get things organised, then we will.
No. We have to be honest. We have to be honest. So just, full disclosure, Bailey Smith, the Cats had to bring in the much better abs than they would have brought in with Clayton Oliver.
I will say though, and I'll get on to him in a moment. And from the Petrarca thing, if he wanted to go to Collingwood, what would they have offered? They would have had to have offered, let's be honest, at least 3 first rounders for him. Like this is a guy, I know he's injury, but this is a guy that's won a Norm Smith, multiple All-Australian, multiple best and fairest winner. You'd say on his day, wins a game off his own boot, which he did against Carlton this year. An absolute freak of a bloke. They didn't have the currency to offer up. So there was no chance he was going anywhere.
Yeah.
But what I think it did though, it did shake things up in the off the park. And we've seen those things happen. And it just seems to be like every couple of weeks, there'd be a big news story about the Glenn Bartlett issue, or there'd be an issue with players not being. We haven't heard that so far. And like I said, from the times
it's good.
They look tight. They looked excited. They do look fit. I will say that.
Okay.
Especially the couple that we're spoken about at the moment. We'll get on it a little bit later on. There's a good vibe with the old and the new. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is there's a bit of some new spunk that's going to hit the track for the D's this year that I'm really excited about.
And you brought in 2 kids in the top 11 picks also. So that's, go ahead.
Should I say, look, with those two, look, here's the thing is that you draft for the future and you trade for the now.
Yeah.
And I think Melbourne have done it really nicely where they've got their experience. And we know May, Lever, Gawn, Oliver, Petrarca, Viney, Fritsch, Salem, Langdon. Like these guys have been around a long time. Petty as well too. They are getting a little bit higher in age, but they're not at like a Collingwood or a Geelong level. Like we're talking a multiple number of 30s. All right. May, Viney, these guys I can understand. But the guys that they've brought in, they've gone, okay, we need a lot of midfield. And where's the ball one? Ball's won really off halfback these days. So they went for Langford, a big-bodied like beast. Like when you see him live, like he'll be ready to go pretty much round one. Where they play him, that'll be an interesting thing. And Lindsay, he has had a bit of a restricted program with his knee, but from what I've seen, his ball use and decision-making is first class. And that's one of the things that's let Melbourne down over the last number of years is their use of ball. And use the ball inside 50. Charlie Spargo copped a massive backlash from a lot of Melbourne supporters over the years. And if people saying that's not true, well, where I sit, he's copped a bit about it. But one of the good things I remember in the Carlton final a couple of years ago, his ball delivery inside 50 was sublime. And so that's something that they need to improve. And that's something that those two guys definitely, they're both left footers. And they're going to make a massive difference. And what they've done in the last couple of years as well, too, with Windsor and Tholstrop, they're bringing in these kids to replenish as time goes on. So I'm really excited by those 2 kids, but also the ones that they've brought in over the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a few, on the north side of 30. I counted, if I counted correctly, I counted 6 right now. They're on the north side of 30, and another 3 that will be there during this season. McAdams, Christian Salem, and Jack Billings. I mean, they're not, and again, I just have a hard time, being my age and sitting there thinking, people who are 30 years old, gosh, they're getting up there. Like, come on.
I agree. There are a few of them pushing towards 30-ish. But I also look at the positions that they play as well, too. So Salem plays like halfback, not a big issue. Billings, I wouldn't say has had a body that's been battered and bruised over the years. Who was the third one?
Shane McAdam. But he's only played 53 games in his entire career.
He hasn't been an 18-year-old being smashed from pillar to post.
Right.
So it's not too bad. Obviously, Gawn, Viney, May would be the ones that I'll be looking at as they're the ones that we're going to have to look at. How do we replace those over the next few years as well? I think they've got some things in place, but once again, it's great to replace it with a Jag. But when you've got Rolls Royces sitting in your driveway, you sort of don't want to replace it with something that's just a little bit under. So they're going to have to maybe think about, do we now start looking at trading a few players in? Because that's what really set them up for in that premiership year, is that they did draft well, but they needed that on-field experience, which you get with older players. So they haven't done that for a while. I'd like to see them maybe look at it the next couple of years.
So, Simon, a lot of people were talking about Simon Goodwin kind of being on the hot seat, but, it sounds to me as though you're thinking maybe it's not as hot as a lot of people would actually think it is, because it sounds from what you're saying is that the continuity is starting to get there. They're working hard. They're in shape. They've got a much more positive outlook than they've had over the last year plus. So maybe his seat has cooled down a little bit for him.
It is smoking hot.
Okay.
I reckon it is smoking hot. It is, because you've got to put this in perspective. If they get their full complement back and they're still playing that boring game style, because at the start of 2024, the first few games, they were using a fast-paced launch off halfback type of style. And then for whatever reason, when things didn't start to go, they went back into that kick down the line, contest, etc. We can't do that anymore, because the AFL has evolved. Playing has evolved. You saw the way that Brisbane played. You saw the way that even St Kilda changed the way. They were a very contest-driven team from Ross Lyon. Their back half of the season was magnificent. So you have to change. Hawthorn, we saw what happened with them. If you do not change, you'll get caught out. Now, his contract is up next season. Not the one that's coming up next season. You can pay out a coach 12 months in advance these days. Not 6 months, 12 months. So they'll get a full 12 months. If things don't go right for him and they miss finals this year or end up in a similar position, I think that question is really going to be asked. Really going to be asked, because we cannot have another underperforming year. And you know what? This is going to be his 2, 4, 6, 8, 9th season at the helm. It's around about that 8, 9 year mark where you might need to get a fresh voice coming in. We've seen what's happened with Sydney. They had to do it with Cox coming in. And I think if you have a look at the coaches that are in a little bit of, uncertainty, Longmuir, Nix, they've been around for a number of years. They're going to be, what do we do? So he really has a lot of pressure on him. And I think he got read the riot act by the players. You need to change the way that we play, because it's boring style. We don't like it. And it's not the way of the future.
Right.
And so, yeah, there is definitely, I think there's pressure on the entire club, but in a good pressure.
Yeah.
They need to change, because yes, I've got the posters behind me with their premiership from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But the game has changed a hell of a lot in 4 years. You need to adapt. You don't adapt
and not to mention a few of the folks that are there are 4 years older, but they're still
exactly
performing.
Right.
When they're fit and firing, they're still very good players.
Don't get me wrong. If you have Gawn, Viney, Petrarca, and Oliver firing, any team would love to have a midfield like that. But once again, they got beaten so often in centre clearances last year. And they're the sort of things that made you think, hold on, how can we have a nucleus of an awesome midfield and we're getting beaten by North, we're getting beaten by Gold Coast, we're getting beaten by St Kilda. And that's no disrespect to those teams, but you'd think once again on paper that you would be able to get the ball when you got the all-Australian ruckman putting it down people's throats. How are they able to shark it off ours? How are they beating us out of the middle in clearances? It was embarrassing at times, and I think they've put a lot of work into that, which is really good to see.
So what are you looking for this year? As the season, as they go through the fixture and the games roll by, what are the things that you're going to be looking for that's going to tell you, A, okay, things are going well, or B, the caution flag is out right now because things are not going well. What are those key things on both sides of that coin that you're going to be looking at and then talking about during your show to reflect on how this club is going?
Yeah, definitely. Look, the things that I'm looking forward to is the emergence of players. Now, when I say the emergence, there's a perfect example. Last year, Trent Rivers, through necessity, jumped into the midfield and just found his home. He played off halfback in the premiership year, jumped into the midfield and people could see it, but he really just lapped it up. And we want to see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see more of Judd McVie, whether it's on the ball or coming off halfback a little bit more, because he hasn't missed a game since he first debuted. He's off the rookie list, but he's just one of those ones you go, how did so many clubs miss out? He's one of those ones that you can't not like him from a Melbourne player's perspective. I want to see Van Rooyen come on. Like, mind you, he still kicked 30 goals, 16 in his second season last year. And pretty much he was a lone hand up there from a tall perspective because Petty didn't do anything. So, I want to see that 30 goals, 16 turn into a 40 goals, 25 as an example. I want to have more shots and attack the ball more. And I think by having a little bit more support down there will help him out as well too. I want to see a fit Oliver. I know what I'm going to get from Jack Viney, but it's almost that next rung that is just sitting underneath that have been sort of sitting there for a while that haven't played games. Are they going to make it? Because I think that you have to have really, really good depth. Someone like Tom Fullerton, they brought Tom Fullerton in as a ruck backup for Max Gawn.
Right.
Max Gawn was injured. They didn't even play him. What's going on? Is it a Goodwin thing? Is it a Fullerton thing? Is it a bit of everything? I'm looking at someone like Blake Howes, played a great number of games last year, but I want to see him be in there more regularly and hold that position down. I'm looking at a Bailey Laurie. Is he going to be able to cut it? An Oliver Seston who hasn't played a game yet. A Jed Adams. Like these type of guys that have been sort of floating around for a number of years, are they going to be able to come in? I think having Jake Melksham, he looks fit as a fiddle. If you look Jake Melksham down there in that forward line as like the fourth type of forward, it's going to take some pressure off. Is Kyle Chandler? I want more output from him. So I think there's so many upsides, but I just don't want to see that if things go badly.
Yeah.
I want to see us not just go back into how we used to play. I want changes during the game to apply. So if Petty's, you can see him probably playing centre half back like this year. Didn't do that last year. If things aren't going right, throw him forward for a bit. Or if you're starting him forward, throw him back.
Yeah.
I want to see a bit more of that. I want to see if Max Gawn is not playing well or Max Gawn is play Tom Campbell. That's what we brought him in. So I want the player brought in to be used more often. And I want to see people dropped if they're not playing well. Like that's the other thing is that the brand names kept their spots for way too long.
Yeah. But one positive though was that when you had players missing games last year, this did kind of throw some of these youngsters into that crucible of fire where they had to get some game experience at the highest level, which hopefully will pay off for the club going into this year. So if you start to look at some of these players, and I did the Cats preview earlier today, where they Ben was talking about that Chris Scott is undoubtedly going to start. He'll be managing Paddy Dangerfield and Reece Stanley and maybe Jeremy Cameron if they can convince him to come off the ground and take a week off here or there, just and plug somebody else in there to try to keep them fresh for the entire season. So I mean, you may have the luxury of being able to do that with your side then.
I would hope. I think that they've got enough now in the twos to be able to, at Casey, to be able to come up and fill spots if they need to. Harry Sharp is a perfect example that he could jump onto a wing now. He was a reserve in that an emergency for Brisbane in their grand final last year. So the guy can play. Mm-hmm. He just needs an opportunity. And you put him on the wing. He's won every time trial so far this year. He's a freak. Someone like Matt Jefferson. They picked Matt Jefferson up in number 15 in the draft 2 years ago. Hasn't been able to play a game. We're screaming out, why aren't you playing him? Why aren't you playing him? Now, whether they've got concerns, whether he can be at that level, I think he kicked something like 30 goals in 15 games or 14 games. It was a really, really nice little...
Down to VFL, yeah.
In the VFL, came third in their VFL best and fairest. So the guy can play. You've just got to give... And I hate it when people go, he's not good enough. Well, how do you know he's not good enough? You've got to play him and play him for a good step. We're going to play you for the next month. If you don't get a kick, it doesn't matter. We're just going to play you. Mm-hmm. And I think they need to do that. Otherwise, how do you know what you've got? And if you're one of these guys that's not playing well but continually keeping your spot, what's the pressure on you? Go, I'm not going anywhere. Good, he's not going to drop me because I'm insert name here. We need to have a bit of
Yeah,
that.
that's a good point. I mean, it's not for a competition that refers to playoff games as cutthroat finals. Maybe it's far too often that the senior coaches are not, and the list managers who are making the selections on who's playing on game day are maybe not as cutthroat as they need to be in terms of saying you're going to go down and play at the lower level for a week, or you're going to
Yep.
take the week off, and we're going to play this youngster for a couple of weeks, and we may rotate two or three older guys out of the midfield or the back six to keep them out there.
Do you remember in 2007? Well, this is probably before you picked up the beautiful game of footy, but 2007, there was a certain individual by the name of Steve Johnson.
I
Played for a
remember
certain club that you might be
Stevie
very
J. Yeah,
familiar with.
well,
Of course, man.
Ben sat next to him at training last week to watch the Cats train. Yeah.
Caused many issues under the sun. Just wasn't dedicated, and
Hmm.
they basically, mate, you're staying away from the club.
Yeah.
And then what happens? 10 months later, wins a flag,
Yeah.
Norm Smith medal. Like,
Well,
what more could you ask for? Like that's the sort of thing that what I'm talking about is that you've got to be a little bit harder with these guys. And I think that they were going to do that with Oliver last year, but because of the necessity of players being out, being injured, and
right.
Angus Brown, we're losing him in retirement, we had to play
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But I would have probably gone, we're still not going to play you.
Yeah. Well,
So
I look
it's
at
easy to say that now, but the
yeah.
ruthless clubs,
Yeah.
they're the ones that go, we're not going to stand for this, and we're not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
And I'd love a
I
little bit more.
I look at and I'm going to use an NFL example, and I know you don't watch much NFL, but Cleveland Browns have a player on their roster by the name of Deshaun Watson, who is one of the most disgusting human beings to ever walk the planet. I think you could, I think Bill Cosby might dress up as Deshaun Watson for Halloween, and Deshaun Watson as Bill Cosby for Halloween with what they've done. But they signed him a few years ago to a 5-year contract for $230 million guaranteed. They have to pay him every penny of that contract. He has 2 years left on it. He's played 19 games in the first 3 years. 19 games out of a possible 48. He was suspended for 11 of them. He tore his Achilles tendon earlier this year. Supposedly he has retorn it during his rehab, although some people were saying he was out without the walking boot on and tore it. But they'll have him on the injured list this year, but they'll still have to pay him over $90 million over the next 2 years, and he's probably never going to play another down of football for Cleveland, but they still owe him this $90 million.
I wonder why a beer costs $25 at the
God, it's just
NFL.
the worst trade in the history of the NFL. And the NFL goes back not quite as far as Australian football, but it goes back to, the turn of the last century. Yeah. Yeah, just horrific.
Look, St Kilda have been the kings of the worst trades for a long time. Andrew Lovett, for an example. So they've had their dramas. You could look at Hanbury when they brought him in. Just things haven't worked.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think, one of the things that I'm looking at putting a video together is I find that AFL contracts these days are almost like the Jordan 4 Wahlburger colorway.
Mhm.
They're very designer contracts at the moment. Everybody wants one. Everybody wants them. But the clubs actually afford them. And the long contract is going to be the death of clubs. And clubs are getting long contracts for players, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They're fashionable. They're in. It could be a great investment, or it could be a total waste. And I think at the moment, the clubs are not willing to go, you know what? We're not going to pay it. Go somewhere else. We're fine. We'll get something back for it in return.
Yeah.
We're too loyal. I think we need to be a little bit more ruthless in the way that we do things. And Kevin Sheedy said this when I think it was Mark McCurry got a 5-year contract, and he was like, a 5-year contract? Serious? Like, that should be the upper echelon.
Yeah.
How someone like Adam Chera can get a 5-year contract. No, I know this is not the Carlton. He got a 5-year contract extension. Adam Chera, like, he wouldn't be in the top 20 players, 25 players in the league. 5 years.
Didn't Jamar Ugle-Hagan sign like a 10-year one recently?
Yep, he's finishing in 23. 30, I think his contract goes up to.
Yeah.
He may not play another game for the Doggies this season, the way things are looking.
Yeah, it's what it sounds like. It's what it sounds like. Yeah. And
And then,
it's
and then the club have to pay out millions to him.
and but then you have things like what happened with Brett Ratton a few years ago, where, oh yeah, we signed you a new contract last year, and for 5 years, I think it was 5 year contract, and then they kicked him
Yeah.
out, and they only had to pay him for like 6 months of it. It's like
Months.
that to me, that right there, I thought that is, if they're having to pay the players contract, if they've signed them to it, I think they should still be obligated to pay the coach's contract as well, because the coach made that commitment to the club. And
Exactly
if the
right. Well,
and again, I understand that that the clubs operate unlike any sport here in the U.S. I get that. They don't. I get the whole thing with the membership and that sort of thing being kind of the driving force and sponsorship. It's not here where you've got a bunch of self-righteous billionaires who are using these things like they're playing a game of Monopoly, and they're just throwing that money around. So I understand they have to be much more fiscally responsible, but if a club is committed to that player or that coach, I think they should be obligated to pay it.
and it's a double-edged sword too there, Craig, because you've got clubs who are committed to the player, the player's committed to the club. So
Yeah.
a perfect example is like, last week, I don't know if you heard, but Zach Merritt, they rejigged his contract to give him a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, hold on a second. Why are we giving him a little bit more? Oh, it's a reward for, because hold on a second, but he signed a contract a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He was happy at the rate then. Now what? Now because he's done all right, he wants more? Like, it was almost like Jake Waterman over at West Coast. You've had one good season and now you want the world? It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And so if players want to leave, well, leave. You were committed to take the contract a year ago, 2 years ago, and now you want to go. Clubs should be going, no, we're going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
They need to be a little bit more ruthless and treat this like a business. If the player wants to sook and et cetera in the twos, well, so be it. But we're not going to let you go because you want an increase on something that you agreed to a couple of years ago.
Which leads me to
because in the same way, that would mean that the clubs could come in and go, well, you know what? You haven't performed over the last 2 years. We're cutting your wage.
Yeah.
You want the increase? We're happy to take the decrease.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. So at the moment, one club just needs to be brutal and go, we're not doing it. And then there might be a little bit more. But I think even clubs moving back and forth, Melbourne copped a massive whack when they traded Brody Grundy a couple of years ago to the Swans. The Swans needed a ruckman and we let him go for a second round pick. They should have been, you know what, we bought low and we're selling high. We want a first rounder for him.
Mm-hmm.
But no, for whatever reason, no, we're going to do what's best for the player. No, do what's best for the club.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Like, you're leaving. We want to get something we want to leave the place in a better position than when you've gone, not the other way.
Yeah. And that leads me to asking, is this the last year that Kazi Pickett's playing for the D's? Because I keep hearing rumblings that he's wanting to head back out west. Yeah.
And look, you keep hearing it. Mm-hmm. But once again, he signed a contract extension a couple of years ago. All right. He was happy to sign.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you move him on? And you got to remember, Fremantle are his preferred destination.
Right.
An offer that they're going after Chad Warner at the same time. You got to have capital. You have to have picks,
right?
To get something in return as well too. Now I want something. If you're going to go for Cozzy, and once again, you could throw up what's available, but you need to offer something in return for him.
Yeah,
not just going to get him for a packet of chips and a sun hat.
Some Tim Tams.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah, you're going to get him for nothing. No, you're going to pay. And Melbourne are going to go, no, we're going to hold you to your contract.
Yeah.
So he's not going anywhere. He wants to go home. I can understand that, but he loves the club.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that he doesn't like Melbourne. That's understandable. I might go over and love playing for the Adelaide Crows. I don't like the city of Adelaide because it's a giant country town.
Yeah.
But I've got great mates over there. I'm willing to work with them. So I think it's just, once again, it's early in the year. They've got nothing better to write about. You like a tweet. Oh, he's going. That's what newspapers do. They've got to sell papers and they've got to get people to read their websites. Clicks, it's all about dollars and the clicks.
Well, I look at, and I'll just use this example, the Cats, Ratugolea wanted to get out of there and go to Port Adelaide two years ago. And they said no.
Exactly.
And then he wanted to go last year. And they finally worked, they finally worked on the deal. And they held out for, if I'm not mistaken, they said, we want this other little piece to the pie here. We want pick 68. And people were
Yeah.
going, what the hell are you going to do with pick 68? It turned out to be Lawson Humphreys, who came in and did a hell of a job in the back half of the season for them. And, and
Really
I
good.
think he's,
Both sides of his body. Really nice.
yeah. And I think you could safely say that, his name is written on his magnet in ink. It's not in pencil now.
Uh,
He's not coming out of the side very often anymore, I don't think.
he's in a really, really good spot. But yeah, Sava Radaglia. Oh, geez. Yeah, really. Yeah,
Yeah.
got
So
traded
it's
out. Yeah, fourth round selection. Yeah, for pick 58.
50, was it 58 or 68? It was 58?
He actually
Yeah.
so he went second rounder, so number 32,
Mm-hmm.
58, and 63. And you
Yeah.
picked up Rich Edwards, so be it. George Stevens, okay, and Lawson Humphreys.
Yeah.
Why? Because they had their eye on someone. They go, look, this is a guy that we could. You watch the movie Draft Day? Love Draft Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. At the end, he goes, "With special teams. We want Putney. We want Putney.
Right.
That was Putney. We want it because we something special. Let's get the steak knives for it. Let's get the Putney."
Good point. Good point.
Jack,
Yeah.
this was a perfect example for the trade up to Brisbane for Dane Beams. Look how that's worked out. Like, steak knives sometimes are better than the steak. Actually, last longer than the steak if you keep them sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully the steak won't last as long. Uh, although, you know what? And I'm one of those weird people. And if somebody said, do I want a really, really good steak or a really, really good cheeseburger? I'm taking the cheeseburger 100 times out of 100.
Give me the steak.
I'm taking the cheeseburger with grilled onions and mushrooms and some Swiss cheese on it.
Stop it. We're gonna this a yank on the footy is going to be more like a yank on the grill, or a yank in the galley. That's the way this is going.
Well, I've got to get my griddle out of the garage here soon. But I wasn't doing anything outside last week because earlier this week we were down to negative 36 Celsius.
Oh, mate, listen. You chose to live there, all right. You chose to sign the contract. All right?
That's true.
Don't complain, all right.
I was born and raised here. I grew up about 10 blocks from where I live right now. My grandparents lived the next street over from where I am. I walk past their, they passed away years ago, but I walk past their house several times a week.
I grew up 15 minutes down the road. My wife is 20 minutes down the road. Like we're insular. Love it. We signed the contract. Exactly right.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, and somebody on Twitter today posted, that about John Gruden, who used to coach in the NFL, who was actually born in Sandusky. He and I were born in the same hospital, like 6 weeks apart from one another, right before Kennedy was assassinated. So neither one of us did it. We were.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything. Oh, hopefully your name wasn't going to come out.
It wasn't. But I will tell you this actually is the case. I did the math one day, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a school teacher. I teach history, teach government. I had this epiphany in class many years ago that if you're familiar with what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, where back in 1962 the Soviet Union moved all the missiles into Cuba that could wipe out everything in the eastern part of the United States. I was born almost 9 months to the day after the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred. So I realized in class one day that I was one of those, oh, what the hell, the world's going to end anyway, babies.
Yeah, it's 13 days. Great film. I love 13 days, which puts it in a really interesting. But
you've got a Kevin Costner thing, don't you?
No,
draft day, 13 days.
Draft day, 13 days.
How about have you watched Yellowstone?
Well, let's just say the last season up until when it went on an hiatus was brilliant, and then the second half felt a little bit Game of Thronesy last sort of season where they tried to put everything into the last number of episodes.
Yeah, but you know what? You're right.
As long as Jamie got to go to the train station.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yeah. Well, and since you mentioned Game of Thrones, I've been trying to get first of all, it's a couple things in life. I've still not been able to get my wife to watch footy. She's not watched a second of it ever. Okay. I years ago, I sent her the news articles online where the clubs were training at the beach and the guys were in their budgie smugglers and that sort of thing. I sent the picture of, Bailey Smith now, with the abs and such, and she's like, well, the mullet, she refuses to watch Game of Thrones because it has dragons in it. It's not realistic. Now she loves a show called Outlander, which has a guy who's like a time traveling knight, which, time travel.
Is that the lady? Yeah, the lady, the nurse is the time travel.
Yeah, somebody does time traveling, because that's, I've not watched it yet. I probably will watch it someday, but I haven't gotten around to watching it yet. But I'm just thinking that's so much more realistic than dragons. Yeah, so
just as raunchy as Game of Thrones too. So
is it?
Everybody
is it? Okay. Well, you know what? I made the mistake of watching Game of Thrones. I didn't watch it when it was on initially. I watched the entire series in the span of about 8 weeks. And you know how awkward that was watching, season 1, like the 1st of October, and here's Arya running around as a little kid, and by the end of November, she's running around butt naked. Do you know how awkward it was watching that?
Yeah,
that happened in 2 months, and I had to remind myself there was like 12 years in real life that happened between these two events.
A little bit like that as well too. If you ever watch earlier episodes of Modern Family, and then you go to the later ones, it's very similar.
Okay, because I've not watched Modern Family. That's not one I've done. I don't do a lot of sitcoms, but yeah. So, you're a little bit more bullish on the club than I was thinking you might be, because it sounds like things are going well, and you're thinking that they've learned from their mistakes, they're going to rebound, possibly find their way maybe close to the 8, if not back in the 8.
Like I said, they lost 4 games by less than 10 points, I think, last year. And if they won 3 of them, they make it.
Right.
So they weren't that far off. Last year was an extraordinary season when you have a look at that AFL ladder at the back end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Between Melbourne, who finished 14th,
and
Brisbane, who won the flag, finished 5th, there was 3 games.
Yeah.
So it was close. Now, the other thing that you need to have a look at, though,
14 points, it's percentage.
The other thing that I'm a big advocate for is having a look at the percentage.
Yeah.
The percentages sometimes gives you a better indication where teams are.
Yeah.
And Fremantle had a cracking percentage. Now, mind you, Melbourne helped them in one of those big games as well, too, but 111%. So they can score. Problem is that they also
so can other teams.
Or against them as well too.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they almost need to build the wall Trump style and just stop the ball going in. Collingwood finished on 102, but outside of that, you had St Kilda ended up on 99, Gold Coast were on 99, Melbourne on 98, and Adelaide on 99. Yeah. Teams weren't far off. That's a mass, but then if you go a little bit further, West Coast, North, and Richmond, big disparity. They're all sitting in the 60s for a percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
Scored. So a lot of these teams, it was whoever played better on the day, especially anywhere up to, like I said, Brisbane. It was tight.
Yeah.
And they've got and I say it's an easier draw based on last year, but we know that doesn't always work. North are going to be playing. I think we've got Richmond a couple of times.
You've got West Coast. Yeah, you've got the Suns, the Blues, the Eagles, the Hawks, the Magpies, and the Saints.
Yeah.
Doubled
up.
So
I'm pretty happy with that mix.
Yeah.
Because I think Hawks are going to be interesting, and I think we can match up well against them. North, I'd be happy with. Richmond, I'd be happy with. Collingwood, I'm a bit concerned because with Collingwood, we know that they've got an aging list, and it didn't bite them on the butt last year.
Yeah.
But when you're heavily relying on Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Howe,
Jamie Elliott,
Chris Elliott, they brought in Membry, Myercheck, Cox.
Yeah.
Like they're Rolls Royce.
Mm-hmm.
You only need if Pendlebury goes down, I think that's going to be a big loss from a leadership perspective. We saw if Myercheck or Cox go down, it's a little bit of a challenge for them to score.
Right.
And I've even forgot Darcy Moore. He's getting on as well too. So, and they're also susceptible down back. So I think that if Collingwood have a bad injury run, which can happen, we saw it happen last year. It's okay to have it at the start of the year. The first 10 games set up your season, and then the back end solidifies it. Yeah. So you really need to be sitting in the top 8 after 10 rounds.
I mean, they've got 10 guys at 30 or over right now, and they have another two, McStay and Darcy Cameron, who will be 30 before the season is over. So you've got
Exactly
a
right.
dozen. So that's about
And
35,
how many of those?
40%.
How many of those are in their top 18?
Well, Pendlebury House, yeah, Side Bottom, Cox, Elliott, Myachek, Mitchell, Hoskin Elliott, Crisp, Tim Membry, the whole damn crew. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly right.
Exactly. Yeah. So
You got to
that's,
worry about them, but you got to worry about the players playing off them as well
yeah,
too.
yeah.
And so that's why I know that you've got Gorn, but Gorn's a ruckman. Ruckman are usually older. You've got
Hmm.
Mate down back. Okay, Viney's getting a bit older, etc. But they've got a lot of youth, especially that down that forward line where that's a big. You were talking about me. What's my biggest concern? My biggest concern is the forward line, but I'm not massively concerned
Hmm.
because I was still able to kick scores last year. What happened was the connection from the midfielders to the forwards wasn't there. Now, going down to training, Troy Chaplin's moved into the forward line coach. And the way that he has been describing how to play from a forwards, he's looking at it. This is what a backman would do. So this is what you need to combat. It's been a really different way of looking at it where a lot of forwards coaches, you need to lead here, you need to lead there. He's looking at it. This is what a backman is going to do against you. So this is what you need to do as a collective to make it work. And I've been really buoyant by what I've seen. Van Rooyen's got another year under him. We know you're going to get from Fritsch. Chandler needs to score. But now you've got people like Tholstrup coming in. Langford will probably play half forward. The biggest loss to Melbourne this season will be Alex Neil-Bullen because he ended up third in the best and fairest last year. And if you have a look at from a statistical perspective, he was top 5 for disposals, handballs, contested possessions, uncontested possessions, score assists, score involvements, clearances, tackles, like these sort of things. He was up and down always. So he'd put pressure down back and then make an option down forward. Now, that's why they went after Harry Sharp to sort of take over from him. But Shane McAdam looks fit. They haven't rushed his preseason. Jefferson will probably play a little bit forward. They've brought in Aiden. I had his name and I picked him up as the third player in the draft as well.
I'm still on the Crows site right now looking at Alex Neil-Bullen. So
name I went completely blank, but they picked him up. He's going to be just a nice. He's not going to dominate, but he's going to be a bigger body. Somebody has to pick up.
Aiden Johnson.
That's right. He looks like a big boy. If Fullerton gets fit, then you've got an option there. And Cozzy is going to be out for the first few rounds, but that also gives other players that opportunity as well too. So I think that there's a lot of benefits. Lindsay can stand up; he can play half forward if you want to as well too. So I'm not looking at it going, oh geez, are we going to be able to actually do something here? I think that they're going to be in a, even got Luca Kentfield, who's they picked up as a mid-season draft last season. He's a big body, another full preseason under him. He's got that opportunity. So I'm really looking at it going, we're in a good spot. Even having Nathan Jones there from a midfield clearances perspective, like the respect that he has and what he's been able to bring to the midfield setups. You watch him at training, don't run here, go here. This is what you need to think about. They needed to make changes and they did. Something they haven't done for quite a while. They know that their forward line wasn't working. Stafford got moved on. They know that they needed someone from a midfield perspective. They got Jones in. They needed to make some culture changes. They got a culture specialist to come in who's worked with the All Blacks, now they've also signed up their mental coach who worked with Ash Barty for them. So the players have said, we need this, and they've gone ahead and done it. So once again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We've seen that. But if you make those bloody horses thirsty, they will consume it. And that's what they need to do. We've got to really make them thirsty to perform because, like I said, there's so much talent at the disposal, young and old. It would be a waste if they don't do something with it this year. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying Goodwin could be in a bit of trouble if he doesn't move on. And you might see players go, I want to move on as well.
So do you worry then about, if he goes and all the stuff that if things fall apart and don't go the way you're hoping, and he's done all these things and he's brought all these people in, and they decide to get rid of him, and maybe the players are starting to buy into it, but they're just not seeing the results on the ladder.
Yep.
And if they send him away, you're going to pretty much have a reset where you're probably, whoever the new senior coach is going to want to bring in their own people, I would think.
I don't know
Okay.
because you only have to look at Collingwood a couple of years ago. Buckley couldn't get the most out of a list.
Yeah.
Cray comes in within 2 years, takes them from 13th to premiers.
Yeah.
So that can happen. It can happen quick. And sometimes I'll be interested to see what happens with Sydney this year. Because you're going from Longmire, who got everything right, but just couldn't do it. Cox is just going to, just a shift, just a small shift. You're not playing golf, just turn the hand, just get the grip. If you get the grip right, that can make a massive change.
Yeah.
If you get your alignment right, it can make a massive. So once again, trust the process and the results will happen. And that's where I think they need to trust what's being put in place for it to work.
Yep. So, you mentioned Sydney. You mentioned Sydney a little bit there. So who are you looking at? Maybe moving into the 8 that weren't there, and who do you see possibly moving out of the 8? And if you had to anoint someone with visiting a new cabinet maker to install a new drawer for their wooden spoon, who's getting that addition on their house?
All right. Well, so I haven't done my full ladder analysis just yet. I know a lot of people, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of podcasters are coming out. I don't do that until at least I've seen some practice games.
Yeah.
I just like to get a bit of a feel for what I've seen. But if I had to go on how teams finished last year, the feeling, the vibe, etc.
Right.
All right. So let's just go. Who do I think is going to move into the 8 and who potentially could drop out? Okay. And then I'll give a wooden spooner in a minute.
Okay.
So my concern, here are my concern teams from, actually, let me go to the teams that are going to drop out. I'll do that first because that's probably the easiest ones.
There you go.
My concern teams are Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't trust them. Yes, they can win at home, but I don't think they don't score with their forwards enough.
Right.
So there's so much reliant on their midfielders. If you can clamp down on that midfield, and it's very hard to do, if you can clamp on that midfield stream, they don't score. We saw what happened in the grand final last year. Heaney didn't get a sniff. Their best forward was Parker, who didn't spend hardly any time on the ground. Like that's I'm just concerned that their forward line in Armady, McLean, they're just not going to fire. And so I actually think that they are top 4. I don't think they'll be top 4 this year. I think that they will drop. All right.
Okay.
If Jamara Ugle-Hagan does not come back to the Dogs this year or is out for a considerable amount of time, I think the Western Bulldogs are very susceptible to drop out. Okay. Even though they got Darcy, I think picking up Matt Kennedy is a great addition to their list. It just deepens their midfield, takes a bit of pressure off Liberatore, a little bit of pressure. I love what Ed Richards did last year. He was exceptional. But I've just got this feeling about them at the moment. I'm not 100% sold. I think there's still something with the Bevo situation.
So before you go on, whose seat is hotter, Bevo's or Goodwin's?
Ask me after 5 rounds.
Okay.
Yep. Ask me after 5 rounds. I would say Bevo.
Okay.
They did win a flag in 2016. Hasn't really done much since then. Goodwin won 2 years ago. They did go out straight sets in finals, etc. Understandably. But I've seen a lot more change from a Melbourne perspective this year. Bulldogs had it last year where they changed a lot of things off field, coaches wise, etc. So I would say Bevo, but ask me after 5 rounds because the jungle drums will be beaten.
There you go.
You said who could drop out. It's almost like who won't drop out. I can't see dropping out. I don't see Brisbane dropping.
Who was the one you mentioned before Brisbane?
Geelong. I don't see them dropping out.
You faded there for just a second. Yeah, okay.
So Geelong I don't see dropping out. I don't see Brisbane dropping out. I do have a case for Port Adelaide. Marshall's gone down with an Achilles. He's not going to be there for the season. That's going to be a challenge. Have they got enough potency up forward? I'm not too sure. GWS, can they go to another gear? Can they? I know Stringer, they reckon's lost about 5 kilos. That's great. But is it going to work with Hogan, etc.? I don't think that they'll drop out, but will they be top 4? I don't know.
How does that make his tattoo look with being down 5 kilos? Does it change the wingspan on it?
It just makes that gorilla's head a little bit thinner, but stupid. Hawthorn, all right, they can either go one or two ways. Harder draw. People are going to be more aware of what's going on. Are they going to be able to do it? I think they're going to be okay. The big one that I think could be dropping out is Carlton.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the reason why I look at Carlton is they screwed the pooch against Brisbane last year.
Yeah.
So that they were so far out of that game, it was ridiculous. I think Curnow, regardless of winning Coleman's, doesn't do enough.
Yeah.
He doesn't do enough, doesn't crash packs, etc. I'd actually, funny enough, I thought Mackay was the liability, but his goal kicking last year was a lot better. And I probably trusted him a little bit more. It even showed in that final last year. I think he was the only reason why they were in there for a while was Mackay and when De Koning went into the ruck.
Let me ask you this question right here real quickly while we're on Curnow. And I'm going to reference somebody who was just with your side until recently. Is he kind of just like a more productive Ben Brown? Ben Brown never did a whole lot around the ground. Yeah, he was a great goal kicker, very accurate, but you never saw Ben Brown really making tackles and spoiling balls and things like that. I
think Curnow has a lot more arrows in his quiver. So I look, I rate Ben Brown. He got us a flag, kicked 3 in a grand final. What more could you ask for?
There you go.
And we needed but he was very much a lead mark type of player. Curnow could still do a lot more of that. Curnow's really good up the ground. He's around the ground kicking is sublime. I really like what he does, but I just think at times that if you have a look when we need someone to crash a pack, it's not him.
Right.
And I just think what he's got, he just doesn't do it enough. And that's my concern that if something happens to Mackay and we're going to put that reliance on Curnow, we've seen previously he hasn't been able to really stand up. I could be wrong, but things happen. But also Nick Newman going down, like that is a big loss. So you've got Nick Newman going down. Walsh has done a bit of a hamstring. So I think it's a blessing in disguise to get these kids, Jagger Smith, the Camporelli twins, Farrell, an opportunity to get some early games into them. And I think Mars going to be a good pickup for them as well too. So I think that they've got a lot of positives, but there's this something that just doesn't taste right about them at the moment. And I'm still not convinced on Voss. I'm still not convinced on Voss that he is the answer. We saw it happen at Brisbane.
Yeah.
Now he's burning through credits. He's got everything under the sun. They could be a bit susceptible. So like I've named almost 6 teams there that you could almost see drop out of the top 4, drop out of the top 8 if things go wrong.
Right.
But you have to replace them with someone. Now, just because 6 teams drop out doesn't mean that there's 6 teams that are going to go in, because you have to be good to do so.
Right.
In a semi type of order, Fremantle, I reckon, are the biggest ones to jump in. They've picked up Bolton. They've got Jai Miss down there. They've got Tracy. Their forward line is set up really nicely. I just like with the way that they've got Hayden Young running through the middle, Sarong, Brayshaw. I just really like Pierce down back. I just like the way Luke Ryan could get going on and on. So I think Fremantle will definitely jump in because they needed a bit of X factor. They get that with Bolton. The next one I could probably see is I definitely could see Collingwood go in, but I could also see Collingwood drop depending on an injury side of things.
Yeah.
Because they've once again a little bit like my mob. They've got a high level talent, but it's just a little bit older.
Right.
I'm just a bit concerned.
I mean, the wheels on that bus could just fall completely off. I mean, they could tumble down to the bottom into the bottom 6 even,
They could fall heavily, and we saw it happen a couple of years ago. All right. A team that I don't think many people are rating, but I just like the way that they finished off the season and the way that they've drafted this year, St Kilda. I didn't think St Kilda, they finished on 99.4%, but their last 10 weeks of footy was actually really, really good. And I think that they brought in the Flying Viking. They brought in another guy that are just going to set their centre half forward, centre half back up for the next number of years. And I think also Ross Lyon has changed the way that he plays. Max King is a concern. He could fall over and he could put his jumper on and dislocate his shoulder. That would be an issue. But St Kilda gave me a little bit of hope towards the end of last season. So if I'm going on what I saw, if they continue at that trajectory, they could sneak in. They're not going to be top four, but they could definitely sneak into that bottom part of the eight. Adelaide, once again, you get Neil Bullen in. They also get Port Adelaide, also got Lukosius. I forgot about Lukosius earlier on, so that might make up for Marshall going down. But I think Adelaide, they've got enough. They've had enough chances. This is like they've got to do it this year. Otherwise, there's issues there. Gold Coast, are they ready for this year or next year? I don't know, but they're setting themselves up. They're like the OKC in the NBA. Like they've got that many draft picks and that many good kids coming. Well, they are building a dynasty. They just need it to click. And last but not least, I'm saying my mob as well too. Like everything that could have gone wrong did last year, and they still missed out. But
that's true.
Fitter team. So I could see a lot of shifting going on in that top 8, bottom 8. I just haven't worked out who's going in and who's going out. Like I said, I could go 6 out of the 8 could drop out.
So who's taking home the wooden spoon this year?
Taking the wooden spoon this year. Look, I have to go with Richmond.
Based upon
I just thought it's Richmond, and it's no disrespect to them, but they've just drafted 6 kids.
Yeah.
We saw what happened when Hawthorn did it. They were down the bottom of the barrel. Saw what North Melbourne did. They were down the bottom.
Yep.
Melbourne for a number of years when they just drafted kids. You have to go through the pain to get the gain. But I think that they've done right. Now, I look at what Richmond have done where they've just gone, you know what, slice out the guts, get what we can for the guns. Bolton,
Baker,
went to West Coast.
Liam Baker. Yeah.
Get the goods and then draft the best kids possibly that we can get in, get them coming through. They've done what teams like West Coast should have done, Adelaide should have done, and St Kilda should have done over the last number. Get rid of the ones, get some value, bring them through as a group. They will bounce back quickly, I reckon, but it won't be this year.
Let me ask you this question here, because there's an X factor for everybody's draft position that most people have not dealt with, is that and I don't know if the league will, and I talked to somebody about this the other day during a preview. I don't know what the league will do as far as the team in Tasmania, as far as them creating their list, because I think they're going to start playing in 28. I think
28. They want that first.
Yeah,
clubs, and that's why I like what Richmond have done, because they are setting themselves up for success. That's what Gold Coast. That's why Gold Coast are going to juggernaut. Yeah. Because when the team comes in, we're going to lose. When that happened with GWS and Gold Coast, Melbourne copped it, Port Adelaide copped it, St Kilda copped it. A lot of teams who were sort of needed those first and second rounders, those gun kids, never got them because they were all chewed. And that's what put a number of clubs back. Essendon probably put them back quite a fair amount.
Yeah, well,
Hawthorn smart. They went and targeted ready-made players, so they were thinking in front of the curve. But yeah, teams need to get it on this year and next, because there's also the other thing that we forget that's happening in trade period this year. Do you know what that is?
No.
So as of this season, and you can cut this out if I'm wrong, you'll be able to trade for 2 future years. So at the moment, we're trading for next year's draft picks.
Okay.
Up to go for 2 years.
Okay.
So someone like a Petrarca, Collingwood could have said, we'll give you 2 this year, and we'll give you 2 this year, 1 next year, and 1 year after that.
So instead of let's say that Collingwood wanted to get Petrarca, Collingwood wasn't having to go out and figure out how to go get a first-round pick this year from Club A and another one from Club B to be able to bring those back and package them up. They could ship out this year's, next year's, and maybe only have to go find one additional one to bring in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years advance. So now when that comes in, that is going to open it up big time for clubs.
Yeah.
And I know that the AFL have been a little bit scared of it, but I'm thinking, hold on, you got to risk it for the biscuit. And if clubs are willing to do that, then they're the ones that have to win. If they're going to celebrate the successes, they also have to deal with the losses as well too.
Yeah.
I'm a massive advocate of that type of drafting coming through because I'm looking, like I said, the NBA, the OKC, Oklahoma Thunder, they are building a team that might not only win it this year, but they could win multiple with the amount of draft picks they've got stacked.
Yeah.
And that's what Gold Coast have done. Gold Coast could go, we need a Petrarca, as an example. We've got draft picks coming out of our booty.
Yeah.
Take 5 first rounders and we'll have him.
Yep. So
I'll win. So
here's the and I kind of like this, and I'm glad they put a cap on it at 2 years. You've referenced the NBA. Now you go back to the 1970s. The Cleveland Cavaliers in the 1970s were owned by one of the dumbest owners in professional sports history, a guy by the name of Ted Stepien, and I will link to this in the show notes. I jotted it down on my notes that I've got on the screen that we're talking about here. This was the guy who was the owner of the Cavaliers, and he was terrible. He traded like 5 years worth of first round picks for players that were awful. I mean, awful. And the league actually changed the rule. There, you can Google it. It's called the Ted Stepien rule, Stepien, the Ted Stepien rule, which is, if you've ever wondered when you follow the NBA why you don't see teams trading back-to-back first-round picks, it's because of this guy. Because this guy had traded like 5 picks or 5 years worth of first-round picks to where this club had a bunch of scrubs, a bunch of guys who should have been playing in, the Sunday afternoon Masters League, if we're going to use a footy analogy, who should have never been in an NBA game because they were terrible. But he thought, well, I know better than everybody else. He's a horrible owner. The league changed the rules. When he was forced to sell the team, they actually allowed the brothers. Their last name was Gund. The new arena that was in Cleveland where they play now was named after them initially. The league allowed them to buy like alternating year first round picks, like at the end of the first round, to get back into the league because of this guy had basically, they were worried about the franchise folding, and they didn't want to have that happen. And so there's a rule in the NBA. That's why you'll see teams that are, they'll I saw somebody right now that's talking about trading a first round pick in 2031. 2031. It's 2025 right now. You're talking about, pick getting traded likely for a kid who's, a player who's in junior high school right now, who's like a 12 or 13-year-old kid right now who could be a first round pick sometime down the road, that they're talking about dealing those types of picks. So it's just, and again, I don't watch the NBA. I pretty much watch footy and cricket, and I subject myself to watching the Cleveland Browns.
Every other sport that's not a US sport.
Yeah. Yeah, it's footy and cricket. That's how I choose to occupy my sport viewing, and I'm ecstatic about that.
And I'm ecstatic at the fact that they're opening it up to 2 years.
Yeah,
and not that. I think that you can see the changes that have had since we've opened it up for 1 year. 2 years is going to be players moving left, right, and center. So that's why I say clubs need to be a little bit more cutthroat, but they also need to be realistic what they get.
So do you think? Do you think that the mid-season trade period is going to end up happening sometime soon?
I think it will, but I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do it because, look, it would have to almost be players swap for swap, because if you've, unless you know what draft picks you're going to have at the end of the year, you don't know what you can trade for. So, trade period comes along. That Geelong have finished third and I've got Geelong's second rounder. I know that I'm going to have technically 18 picks, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, I got your second round pick. I know maybe halfway through the season where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be, oh, that looks good. But then have a bit of a run that goes the other way. So I don't know whether it's going to be just a straight player for player. I don't know whether it's going to be picks for what they've got.
Yeah.
There's a lot that needs to be worked out. But we could go on the whole thing about father sons academies.
Yeah.
Next generation. That whole thing needs to be blown up completely because it's got out of control.
Oh, so you think father son should go away?
I don't think father son. I don't think should go away. But I think you need to pay the price, like a real price for it. So as an example, Levi Ashcroft, was a first rounder.
Right.
Well, I got him as a father son for a packet of chips.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to. My way of looking at it is that if you know that he's going to be a first rounder,
Mhm.
right, you have to have that pick. So if somebody nominates him in the first round, you have to have a first round pick to match it with, not just points. Points because you can get points from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pay the price, you pay the actual price for him.
Yeah.
The benefit that you get is that you're getting him. You're matching the bid you can get him, but you need to pay the right amount for him as well.
Right. Right. So
That's the way I'd be looking at it.
what is you're going to plant your flag here. What is your bold prediction for 2025 for the league? Maybe not for your club, but for the league. What is your thing that you're going to say that's going to get people to go, whoa, I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming. Have you thought about that at all yet? I know you really haven't finished up your ladder yet. You're still working on that, but have you got one of those? And then also, what's the headline at the end of the year in the Herald Sun for the D's season?
It's funny. I went and had a look at my tips for last year, and I actually picked the grand final at
Wow.
the start of the. Yeah, I completely fluked that, but I also said that Nick Larkey will win the Coleman. And funny enough, I'm going to go with that again. I reckon Nick Larkey is a massive chance to win the Coleman this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have Jack Darling down there.
Yep.
He's going to have a midfield that is going to get the ball down to him a hell of a lot more. We know that when he kicks goals, he kicks bags. Like, it's very regular that he'll kick a 3 or 4. I say a bag is 6, but he'll kick a good handful on a semi-regular basis.
Right.
Through evolution, they're going to have Caleb Daniel ball in his hands, and I mentioned Parker as well too.
Yeah.
Going to be in a really good position, and so I think that he'll definitely, I reckon, will win the Coleman this year. From a Brownlow perspective, it was interesting. I was having a look at what the Brownlow sort of setup was last year and who won it. We know that Cripps won it. I think the Brownlow needs a complete overhaul, because how a player can have 45 votes is a joke.
Yeah.
That's like how a player can have 38 and lose. How a player can have 29, 28, 28 and lose is a farce, because that was what players were winning it on 20 years ago.
Right. So let me ask you. Let me toss out my thought on the Brownlow. Okay, it's considered the league's best and fairest, if you will. But with the way the game is adjudicated right now, in terms of with bumps and that sort of thing, and players getting rubbed out and penalized and sent to the tribunal and suspended for a game here or there, and you may have somebody who is head and shoulders the person that should win the Brownlow because they've been the best midfielder. Let's just put it as a midfielder, all year long, but they're no longer eligible because somebody, ran into their hip in week 4. So, and they were suspended for a game. So my thought was, what if they penalize the player? So if a player gets penalized for a game, that one of their Brownlow votes is stripped away from them, but maybe they still have enough Brownlow votes to actually still win it, even having lost that one because of that one game suspension.
I reckon you keep it simple. You just go best and take out the fairest part. So if you miss 3 games because you've rubbed him out.
Yeah.
I would almost go if you rub someone out for, like, if you miss a week. So you saw what
let's hope that's not on camera, by the way. That could get awkward.
What Isaac Heaney for, right?
Yeah.
It's not what being rubbed out was all about. Like, I think there has to be a bit of common sense, and I reckon, well, you know what, it should be just best now. My other option has been you actually give votes for the forwards, backs, and mids.
Mm-hmm.
So 3-2-1, forwards, backs, and mids. I know it's 2 sets of extra votes, and throughout the year you calculate all the 3s. Mm-hmm. Sorry, the 2s and the 1s. Sorry, so 2s and 1s. And when you get to Brownlow night, that it's almost like what the NRL do. You know what the ladder is into all the 2s and 1s.
Yeah.
And then you just give it, and the rest of it's 3s, 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 3s.
I like that.
And then that means, because you look at backmen who have dominated this season and don't get a sniff.
Yeah.
You got forwards who you have to kick 8, 9 to get a vote. It shouldn't be like
Joel Amartey kicked 10 in a game this year. Or did he kick 9? It was 9 or 10 in a game. Yeah.
9 and got dragged. But that's what I'm saying, is that I know midfield is going to get, but there's forwards that have played cracking games and not got votes. There has to has to be something else that you can work with because you've got to not just make it a midfielders. That's why some people like the AFL, the MVP or the Coaches Award more
Right.
because it's encapsulates everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
But if you want to say who's going to win the Brownlow this year, geez, I'll tell you what. I really like. He's done it the last couple of years. I really like Caleb Sarong from Fremantle. He just love watching him play. And maybe if things go right, he doesn't have his shoulder issues, and they do excel this year. Watch out for Will Day from Hawthorn because
that'd be a good call. Yep.
He's attractive. He does stand out, and he does play good footy, and can finish as well too. And you want me to tell you who's going to make the grand final this year?
Sure.
I'm going with Brisbane again.
Okay.
I just think that to see how they finish the season, and they've got 5 players who had knee injuries who could almost walk straight back into that team, and you throw in another Ashcroft.
Yeah.
They're going to be very hard to beat. And I'm actually going with Fremantle to be the team that matches up.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that the planets are really starting to align for Fremantle. So I reckon it'll be a Fremantle Brisbane grand final. And for another year, no Melbourne team.
So what you're saying is that there should be a lot of tickets available for the grand final because there's going to be a lot of sulking Victorians.
Yes, there'll be a lot of sulking Victorians and a lot of ripped off Queensland and WA supporters as well too.
There you go.
Because you've got to they make top 4 and they win. Like those two teams should actually finish top 2. And if they finish top 2, get the home final, very hard to win up in Brisbane.
Right.
And it's very hard to win over in Fremantle if you've got a pro WA crowd.
That's true. Yep.
Very hard. So they've got everything to go right for them. And I like I said, what both teams are going to be doing.
Okay. So to wrap up tonight,
yep.
You ready for a little bit of D's trivia here?
Go for it.
Okay. I've got a handful of questions here for you. I actually had I had a shorter amount of time with the Cats preview, so I was only able to ask him one question, and it was which team had the Cats defeated more times in their history, and it was for them it was the Bulldogs. It was the Bulldogs, the Tigers, and the Saints.
Oh, okay.
And they've actually defeated each one of them 108 times. So it was a trick question. He wasn't going to get it right. So
I'd say Melbourne have defeated themselves, I reckon, more times than any other.
Okay, so these five Ds, all who played at least 13 games, averaged 20 plus disposals last year.
How many games?
They played everybody played at least 13. Which ought to tell you that, which one that was that didn't play many more than that.
All right. So, Oliver.
Uh-huh.
Viney.
Yep.
McVee.
Nope.
Rivers.
Yep.
Neil Bullen.
Mm-mm.
I'll go. How many possessions did you say? 13?
20. Yeah, they all played at least 13 games. One of them played 13 games. But it's a name that would normally be there, would have normally played more games than that.
Oh, Petrarca.
There you go. You got one more.
Cool.
And you know what? We have not mentioned his name once tonight.
Max Gawn.
Nope.
Ed Langdon.
There you go. Yeah. His name has not come up tonight. Yep.
He's looking fit. He still wears a long sleeve jumper on a 32-degree day during training.
Well, it keeps the sun off of him. Yep.
Next one might hit me.
He and Brad Close have a thing going there. Okay. Who kicked more goals in their Demon career? Gary Lyon or Russell Robertson?
Ooh, good one. Good one. Funny enough, I know the answer for this because I actually had it right in front of me. On 228 goals, Russell Robinson.
Well, he actually kicked 428, but Robinson by 2, 428 to 426.
Oh, that's the games record. There we go. I'm an idiot. I looked at the games record instead of the goal kicking.
Yep. But it was Robertson by 2, 428 to 426.
And that's one of the things that, Robertson was he was amazing. Just, he flew at everything. He took marks, reliable. and Gary Lyon could have been everything except back issues. But tell you what, if you get a
Yeah.
chance to watch kick 10 against the Bulldogs in a final, and I was there that day in 1994, one of the greatest games you'll ever see, and basically got dragged or basically spent the last quarter on the bench. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
These two Ds had the highest. I usually go with lowest. That they had the highest disposal efficiency. Both of them over 80% last year. These two did.
Oh, geez, you're coming up with the good ones this year. I would say Judd McVie.
Mm-mm.
So I'm trying to figure out, was there a minimum number of possessions?
Well, no, this is let me look and see how many games they played for you. Okay, hang on, give me 1 second here. I'll tell you how many games they played. Yeah, let's go to disposal efficiency. Uh, one of them played 19 games, the other one played 18 games.
So I'm thinking, well, Ed Langdon,
Mm-mm.
Alex Neil-Bullen,
Nope,
Stephen May.
that's one. He was at 82 and 3/4. Yep.
And you're saying that there was another one as well, too.
That was at almost 82. Yep.
It's a hard one. I'd say Christian Salem, but he missed too many games. What about Tom Sparrow? Nope.
Sparrow was actually down at 68%. He was way down the list. Yep.
Was Viney?
Nope.
No.
Jake Lever. Jake Lever.
Backman. See,
Yep.
that's why the kick out of full back should not be a kick. You got to kick it to yourself, like you had to do in the old days.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
That's
right.
yeah. When you do the fantasy team, that's always you want to get the defender that does the kick-ins. Get those
Yes.
those free points. Yeah.
Yep. 3 points. Exactly right. All right.
Okay. These two players led the club with over 96% time on ground last year.
Stephen May. No, well, one of them's Ed Langdon. I know that.
Ed Langdon. Yep. Yep.
What if the other one's Bailey Fritsch?
Nope.
That'd be a forward. Somebody spent Jake Lever.
Mm-mm.
Oh man,
He was up there, but not quite that high.
He's giving me all the good ones this year.
He played 22. Both of them played 22 games.
Oh, so it's basically somebody who played every game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Trent Rivers?
Tom McDonald.
Tom McDonald.
96.9.
Yeah, how's that for a bloke that, people thought he'd be finishing up this year because of he went down to the back line and was lime. Amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Now, who led the club in one percenters averaged this year and last year?
I'll just keep going with Alex Neil-Bullen.
Nope. His name has come up in the questions tonight. Fairly recently.
Tom McDonald?
There you go. There you go.
It's funny that you don't think he might only have 101 percenters for the entire season. And then you got somebody who might have 400 possessions for the year, but you think that he would have had more because they're at the ball a lot more. No.
Right.
No. I'll take 1% players over accumulators any day of the week.
So, at which ground have the D's won more games? The SCG or the GABA? I'm sorry, the SCG, the GABA, or the Adelaide Oval?
Adelaide Oval.
Nope.
Oh, the only other one I can't think, it'd have to be Brisbane.
Nope.
They've won more games at Sydney.
Nope. They've won 12 at all three of them. It's kind of like that other question.
Freaking Americans, I tell you. No, I would have thought Adelaide because they've got a really good.
They have done. They're 12 and 7 at Adelaide. They're 12 and 17 at the GABA, and they're 12 and 18 at the SCG. So
I would say Adelaide Oval.
the percentage is higher at the Adelaide Oval. So I'll kind of give you that one. Okay. Okay.
Doesn't surprise me.
So one more question for you.
Okay.
Who has won more games as Melbourne's senior coach, Simon Goodwin or Australian of the Year Neil Danaher?
Neil Danaher.
Correct. 108 to 104. Yep. Yep.
What a superstar. Well,
Yeah.
he is now. His book is over there, and it is
Yeah.
a magnificent read. A great read.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And well deserved too. Like sometimes we hear sportsmen getting it or people that that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
He's made a massive for a guy that only wanted to raise 200,000 to get up to 100 million.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I listen when I drove to visit my son at Christmas time. It's about a 10-hour drive each way. I listened to the Joel Selwood's new book on the way up. I thought that was really well done too, but so people know who you are, but just in case there's one listening right now that does not know about Lace Out and what you and J-Dog do, tell them about what the two of you do and where they can find you and when it's getting back up and running again and how you're going to do so much better at getting your picks than J-Dog does.
Okay, so Lace Out podcast. This is our 8th season moving into 2025. Myself, Chris Pepper, and the magnificent, the co-host with the most, Jamie the J-Dog Wallace. Every Monday night we go live, Australian Eastern Standard Time for all our international viewers. And we go live Facebook, YouTube. We'll be going live on TikTok this year as well too. So you can interact with us. I know Craig's jumped on many, many times. Ask us questions. Give us your feelings. We just, we don't specialize on a team. We specialize on a league because we just like talking footy. Simple as that too. We're going live probably a couple of weeks, probably after the practice matches. So probably about 2 weeks before it starts, we'll actually go live. But I've been posting stuff on YouTube and our Facebook channels.
I saw something today, as a matter of fact. Yep.
Yes, I put up something along the lines of, Nick Watson took a great mark over the weekend. They're calling, in my eyes, there's only one real wizard, and that's Jeff Farmer. And what he did over the years at Fremantle and Melbourne was just a sight to be seen. So we call it how it is. We like to have a bit of fun with the footy, but we also get pretty fired up about particular topics as well too. So all the usual channels, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. But yeah, definitely you can actually watch us live and actually watch the podcast live on YouTube as well too. So like I said, we're only as valued as our community, and that's like most podcasts. All the podcasters in Australia tend to get along with each other really, really well. Even the ones in the US as well. I've had Craig many times.
We try.
Catch up, and that's what it's all about. It's so, if you want to jump on, have a listen. If you don't, that's cool. That's what's so great. You've got options, but it's Laced Out because it's how you. Yeah.
I strongly recommend, if you haven't checked these guys out, they're passionate about it. They're pragmatic. They're not, you guys call things warts and all. If things are going well, if things are not going well, you don't hesitate to point out where there are things going poorly.
Well, maybe it's the more controlled one, and I'm more the say and then think. But you got to have a bit of bad cop, and we just we don't talk about every single game. We talk about if something stands out. We might do a quick little review, but we want to talk about the game itself, because there's so many ones that talk about their club or they talk about the games, etc.
Yeah.
We just want to talk about what's the flavor. And we also like to get a little bit we like to talk a little bit about history as well too, who are our greatest forwards that we've seen, who are the greatest one game wonders, that sort of stuff, just the stuff that you don't do on a regular basis. It's just something a little bit different, but we are passionate about the game. And like I said, when we're going 8 years, and we don't do it if we didn't have people that wanted to listen to us. So
right.
Love it. We just love it. It's our hobby, and we're really passionate about it. And
that's it. That's exactly it. I mean, that's
too as well too. For a guy that's been following footy a number of years from the other side of the world, to be able to to reach out and say, "Do you want to have a chat?" Like it's like Didn't even have to read the whole email. It's like, yes, I'm there.
And I appreciate that. And you should give Peps a follow online because he's a Melbourne supporter who definitely wears his heart on his sleeve. So depending upon how things go, that immediate reaction on the way home from the game could be one of many different things. So if you scroll back through on Facebook, you're going to see some fascinating things on there, unless he's going to scrub all of them now.
Oh,
Uh,
no, 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 no. Look, my wife is starting to not stress out, but she knows that the footy season's coming, so she's starting
yeah,
a little get. I was a little bit reserved on a number of the rants last year, but I think I've had a year off on the big rants. We might start getting a little bit more creative again, like
there
we
you go.
did years ago. So stay tuned, especially if we win. I love it, but aisle 56 for the axe, Simon Goodwin. We might have to go and get you a new one if things don't go well down in Bunnings.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So who has the better snags, Bunnings or you? Because I know you were cooking up some of them before you came on tonight or today.
Look, mine was sitting in the smoker. They'll probably go on for about 20 minutes. They'll be
Yeah.
sublime.
Yeah.
But I think nothing better than when you walk out with a bag of fertilizer, uh, you whip a snipper cord, and going out and getting a snag with some onions and some sauce.
There you
There's
go.
nothing better.
There you go. Although
There's
I'm a
nothing
much
as
bigger
well.
fan of I'm a much bigger fan of mustard rather than ketchup on it. Yeah.
Oh no, I actually go mustard barbecue sauce.
Oh, okay. I've never done barbecue sauce on a hot dog before.
Best.
Well, Peps, I can't thank you enough, man. You have been a wonderful friend. Um, Someday I'm going to get there, and we're going to end
Going
up
to
on
be
this.
this year, or you just obviously
Well,
with things that
it was
probably
supposed to be
spoke
this
better.
year. It was supposed to be this year, but as we talked about off air, and I've mentioned it in other ones, we've got, my wife is going through chemo and radiation right now, so I'm pushing the trip back um, another year. So I've got about 3 years till I retire from teaching. 3 years after this one, I technically I could retire after 2 years, but then she said, "But I'll still be working." I'm thinking, you're going to be using my pension a hell of a lot longer than I will be. I'm 4 years older than you are. So,
I think that if you delay it by a year, you're
yeah.
allowed to stay an extra week.
You know what? I like that idea because it was going to be rounds 19 through 22, and I was going to get to see the Cats play in Geelong 3 times and see them play North for North's 125th anniversary game. So not happening this year, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm still going to be watching. So,
Still going to
so
still going to be
Peps,
loving it. Be tuning
Peps,
in on a
I I
basis.
know it's not your show, but we're going to borrow a line from your show. How is it that you like your footy?
I love it. Lace out.
There you go, and check out
Actually,
Lace Out.
I love it with a yank on the footy.
There you go. Well, Peps, thank you so very much, man. Have a fantastic Australia day, and I wish the best to you and your family.
And I wish all the best to you, your family, everybody going over in the States with all the fires and
Yeah, it's
floods
been
and
hard. Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know, whatever's going on.
yeah,
Just
the big hurricane that rolled through missed. It was about 15 miles, which is what, about 25 kilometers east of where my daughter lives in North Carolina. It just missed where she lives. So, yeah.
you
It's
know
like I
what?
said, it's been a fun end of 2024 and beginning of 2025. So, yeah.
Hopefully it can only get better for everybody.
Yeah, I hope so too. Cheers, mate. Talk to you
Take care.
soon. You bet.
Well, take care, Craig. See you, listeners.
You bet. Bye-bye. All right, Peps. Hey, thanks so very much for taking time out of your Sunday to sit down and chat, man. Um, you are an absolute rock star, and I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate you sharing your time with me and helping me to promote your club for 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, remember you can find everything about my podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. I do hope you'll leave a review. I hope you'll get subscribed on the mailing list there as well. You'll get a pop-up on the screen for that. Takes just a couple seconds, and I don't spam your inbox or anything like that other than when new episodes come out. If you want to help out the show, a review would be fantastic. If you want to help out in other ways, a little monetary help out if you choose to do that. You don't have to, but you can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button over there on my website or check out my Redbubble store page. Get yourself a Yank on the Footy sticker to slap on the back of your car or your ute, if you will. Um, Biggest help, leave a review, tell your friends about it, share it with them. Be a huge help. I truly, truly appreciate that. get subscribed there. Head over to my website, or head over to X at Yank_on, a Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, a Yank on the Footy on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well, or reach out at yankonthefooty@gmail.com. Like I said earlier in the episode, if you would be a great guest or you know somebody who'd be a great guest, I'd love to have you share that information with me because I truly love sharing people's stories about this game. Okay, it's I love it. It's fascinating, and I really, really enjoy being able to get stories for people out there. Now, ladies and gents, um, if you need to talk to somebody, please do so. Check up on your friends, reach out to them, let them know that you need to talk. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay, this has been we all have things that we're dealing with and burdens that we are carrying. If you've listened to some of the other episodes, I've certainly got that going on in my life right now. Now it's been crazy the last 6 months, quite frankly, the last 5 months, 4 months even, with a cancer diagnosis in the family, and my son's house having been severely damaged in an accident. The house didn't get into an accident. Somebody drove through the front of his house in the middle of a street. Don't know how they do it. It wasn't on a corner or anything like that. But those phone numbers for help are in every episode show notes. So please reach out if you need to do so for here in the U.S. and in Australia. And ladies and gentlemen, the world's a much, much better place with you in it. So please talk to somebody if you need to. And as always, ladies and gents, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 366, my chat with the legendary Chris Pepper from Lace Out Podcast. And until next time, ladies and gents, cheers and goodbye.